Those efforts also floundered because the small faction have rejected any attempt to pass one bill to fund the government, even temporarily. And even if they include massive cuts, they could never pass the Senate. They instead want to pass 12 separate appropriations bills, which McCarthy promised during his campaign for Speaker to do. But passing all 12 of the appropriations bills necessary to fund the government would take weeks that Congress does not have. And by the way, he tried to move a number of those bills, and the same group blocked them. So what's happening here with a guy like Gates, they're simply trying to sabotage the leadership in the House because they hate the leadership in the House. He can't possibly win more than 30, 40 votes if he runs. Nobody can. But you got to put your personal ego and your personal obsessions and agenda aside, Gates, because people are getting more and more to know what's taking place here. So that's just some of that's been going on. Ryan Rydell, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, libertarian think tank. I could be wrong, I think he's the working heritage too, if I'm wrong. He says of this group, it's a symbolic fight for bomb throwers who want to pick a fight with Republican leadership no matter what. It's not really about anything. Still going to follow these guys off the cliff, the kamikazes? Still going to join Pickett's chart? Well, what did the third greatest president in American history behind Washington and Lincoln do? As I studied this, it wasn't 6 government shutdowns, it was 8 government shutdowns. Shutdown, Mr. President. Shut down. So I'm looking at History.com, and the person who writes this obviously is of the left, but that's okay. We're not taking her spin. We're looking at the facts. First time the fight over domestic versus defense spending, November 20 to 23, 1981. Large portion of the government actually stopped functioning. It came in 1981 when Reagan furloughed 241,000 of the government's 2.1 million employees without pay. He was pushing what this leftist right says, known as Reaganomics. Now, Reagan campaigned on a platform of cutting domestic spending without hurting Cold War defense funding, and that's exactly what the shutdown was over. So everybody knew why he was shutting down the government. In the end, Congress and Reagan worked out a temporary bill to give them more time to work out a longer-term bill. Number 2, Democrats decide not to stand by their man, September 30 to October 2. 1982, Reagan's first 1982 shutdown. Didn't happen over a major political issue, but the reason behind it is very 1980s. The reason Reagan and Congress didn't reach a budget agreement on September 30 is because they all had social functions they needed to attend. So they all agreed for a one-day delay over the holiday, over the weekend. Number 3, the battle over funding jobs versus missiles. Writes the left-wing individual at History. December 17 to 21, 1982, the government shut down again. Just 2.5 months later, only this time it didn't have to do with a busy social calendar, just like the first Reagan shutdown. This one concerned a clash over funding for domestic spending versus defense funding. Congress wanted to fund public works programs to create jobs, and Reagan didn't want it. What Reagan did want was to fund 2 Cold War weapons, the MX missile and the Pershing II missile, that Congress didn't want to fund. The spending bill that ended the shutdown didn't end up funding either the jobs program or the missiles. It did, however, add funding to the Legal Services Corporation, a social program Reagan tried to abolish. But again, we know why they shut it down. We know why he shut it down. 4th time, support for El Salvador's rebels becomes a sticking point, November 10 to the 14th, 1983. Reagan's 1983 shutdown involved more clashes over social programs versus defense spendings with a twist of international relations. This shutdown came several months after Reagan announced his ambitious Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, which they mocked as Star Wars, and yet which protects the country of Israel and protects 2 of our cities, which I'm not really free to get into. The defense plan required a lot of technology that didn't exist, including space satellites that could divert incoming nuclear bombs with lasers. Critics, of course, poked fun at impractical planning it, calling it rather the Star Wars initiative. Reagan wouldn't give it up. It was in this context the House pushed to increase education spending and decrease defense spending. Reagan opposed it. Congress's proposed bill also cut funding for El Salvador, a country in which Reagan was deeply invested. Reagan believed the Salvadorian rebels fighting the country's brutal government were supported by the Soviet Union. They were communists, you idiot. I'm telling you why he fought them. The shutdown ended with House Democrats agreed to lower the amount of money for education and fund Reagan's MX missile system. The fifth and sixth times the government shut down. Back-to-back crime and punishment shutdown, September 30 to October 3, and then October 3 to October 5, 1984. Reagan's fifth and sixth shutdowns happened. By the way, notice how they always say it's Reagan shutdown? It's always the Republican. Democrats want to spend like drunken Marxists. Their own government...
Signal you are hearing. Please remain calm. We will keep you apprised once we have determined the source of the alarm.
The Crime Act raised the minimum penalties for crimes involving marijuana. It was a precursor to the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 that punished crack possession, just now they're right, this more harshly than coke possession, increasing the disproportionate incarceration of black people. At the same time, Congress wanted to fund water projects and reverse a recent Supreme Court decision in the Grove City College case. Congress and Reagan agreed to pass short funding bill, give extra time to settle the issues, but almost as soon as it started, the government shut down again because they couldn't agree on the bill. To end the shutdown, Congress agreed to give Reagan his crime bill and scrap the